Greetings, everyone. Joining me on today's Next Gen North podcast is Johnn Koenig. Johnn is a Territorian, a small business owner, and has recently had to cease operations in the Darwin city due to violence and safety concerns for his staff. In this episode, Johnn describes his frustrations at the Darwin city business operating environment and just wants to see the territory doing better. We hope you enjoy this episode. Johnn Koenig, thanks for joining us on the Next Gen North podcast, mate. Appreciate being here.
Thank you very much. Thanks for having me.
Now, this one is a bit of an impromptu pod. We weren't sort of planning on having you in so soon, so we really appreciate your time. We've seen today, sadly, in many news outlets, that John's Gelateria is inadvertently closed. It's very sad, and I think it's sort of emblematic of a lot of the problems that are going on in the territory right now. Can you just walk us through what sort of caused the closure?
Yeah, sure thing. So where the shop is located is on Mitchell Street and Nucky Street, so in the heart of the CBD. We are right next to a beautiful park. It's just sometimes the park brings some antisocial behaviour. I shouldn't say sometimes, a lot of the time. There's a lot of antisocial behaviour. So it's an interesting thing because when you look at the shop itself and then you look at the park, in isolation, it's beautiful. You've got a historic building. It's a heritage listed building next to a beautiful park.
Is it the CWA?
CWA, yeah, Country Women's Association.
Yep.
And so you've got picturesque sort of, paint the picture. And then the only issue is that antisocial behaviour creeps in. And then so what happened on Friday night was a man came in and then there was into the park and then there was pretty much an all-in brawl. About 4 or 5 people. He assaulted 4 or 5 people, men and women, and went on for about 10 or 15 minutes. I've gone outside the shop just to make sure the TPS guards were okay, who were on scene, and just to make sure that if I did have to call police, that I could call police. Inside I had 2 staff members, and one of them is a 13-year-old boy. And then we were all watching the fighting unfold. And then so what's happened is after lots of incidences, the perpetrators come around the corner, passing my shop, and now I've got my back to the fence, so there's nowhere else I can really go. And I didn't think much of it at the time, but he went to go walk past. He's gone, put his hand out. He goes to shake my hand. I said, mate, I don't want to shake your hand. You've been fighting. Goes to shake my hand again. I said, mate, you've been fighting. Just keep walking. He's walked away from me with his back turned, and then about less than 4 or 5 meters, he's turned back around, and then he's walking towards me quite aggressively, and he's like, I've got a knife, and I'm going to effing kill you. In self-defense, I've pushed him. He's fallen to the ground. He's gotten back up, and he's tried to swing at me again. And then that's when he was sort of apprehended by TPS. And that was the first of many incidences that night. Maybe 15, 20 minutes later, it kicked off again in that same park. And then police were called again, and that was taken into effect. On Saturday, about 2:45 p.m., there was separate people, separate incidences. There was an all-in brawl. Maybe 5 or 6 people again, men hitting women, women hitting men. Families, children were inside, and they could just, anyone who was walking past can see it. It's on in the middle of the city streets. 4:45, another incident, men, women running up and down the street, Mitchell Street, Nucky Street, and they were fighting. So that's what we have to deal with on a daily basis. Yeah. And the reason why I had closed was it sort of all hit me on the Monday, because the guy, after he assaulted me, said he was going to kill me. He's afterwards said, I've got a knife, I'm going to come back with my friends, I'm going to come back with my family, and we're going to murder you, and we're going to come kill you. And then he's like, you better watch yourself because we're going to come kill you. Monday, I saw another video at a separate incident in Casuarina where the youth had an edge weapon and held up one of the shop attendants. I said to myself, I was like, this is not worth it, man. To make a bit of money, and then you lose your life, or a 13-year-old or a 16-year-old goes to work. Yep. And then they don't go home to their parents don't get their kid back. It's so hard to conceive that we live in the territory where you say that you were born and raised. Mm-hmm. I was pretty much born and raised. Mm-hmm. We've lived here for 30 odd years, and we are watching our city and our state just go into chaos. Yeah. And that's why I closed the shop. And then as I went on Monday about 12:40, walked to the shop to put signage up and just make sure that, I was actually also going to get footage for the police to send to them on the incidences. Yep. And the guy who threatened me was sitting in the park. And I've got video footage, and then I had to go get police. Police, waited, and then the the wagon went out and spoke to him, and then I had to get police escorted into my own shop.
So once the incident's over, you know, like, well, the physical altercation was finished.
Yeah.
You know, you can't even then days later go back to your own place of work and feel like you're safe there, just due to these incidences.
Yeah, pretty much.
And these incidences, you know, they didn't even start in your business, did they? They were just out in the street, and due to the proximity of where your business is located next to the parks, embroiled your business.
Yeah, always.
Yeah.
We've had zero issues at our shop. It's always other people in public spaces cause the issue. And that seems to be everywhere in Darwin. You look at Gelateria, spending millions of dollars on security, and then I heard just the other week that some of the retailers in the food courts are down 60%.
Unbelievable.
And,
you know, with I know personally from being in the hospitality industry how thin the margins are anyway. To lose 60% of your business, I mean, that will send 90% of businesses to the wall.
Yeah.
Straight
It's
up.
funny you say that because Darwin is very, very, I don't even know. We're in dire straits, mate.
Yeah.
My friend's owned businesses for the last 12 years, 15 years.
Mm-hmm.
Everyone I've spoken to, 95% of businesses in food and hospitality or retail have all made the worst revenue we've ever had in the last 3 to 6 months. I made more money in my first shop as a pop-up with my one scoop gelato being $5.50. Now it's $6.50 and now it's $6.80. I made more in my first year than I have in this year.
When did you start?
2018.
2018. And were you operating in the city then? What was the pop-up environment like
I was
for you?
operating in the city. It was like maybe 50 meters down the road from our shop.
Okay.
Like a third of the overheads. Like you said, like how you are, you're just starting out, having a go, good product, learning, and you're learning on the fly. Fast forward nowadays, like my friends he's like, oh, I made the same amount of revenue. They own multiple cafes. Same amount of revenue. It's like, yeah, but cost of goods is through the roof. Electricity is through the roof. Like all our expenses are through the roof, and you're making the same revenue. We're all going backwards. And last year I said 1 to 2 businesses will close. This year, man, it's 3 or 4. ATO is coming. They're already shutting down businesses, and it's just a matter of time. But there's going to be a bloodbath.
So how have you seen things change? I mean, since your start in 2018, you know, you said you were operating in the city from the start, from 2018.
Yeah.
How has the operating environment in the city changed? How has the city itself changed? You know, like how are the government approaching the issues that you guys are facing? You know, what's happening with insurance? You know, how has that sort of landscape changed for you?
It's funny. We were talking off air because there's a lot of questions to answer there, which I enjoy. So the first one that brings to mind is there was a Darwin Business Group meeting that happened maybe 3 or 4 weeks ago. It was a forum, a massive economic report was done. The interesting thing is these reports are done every year. These reports and recommendations are given to the government. What do you reckon happens every year? Nothing. Yep. Or maybe they'll pick 1 or 2. Right. Or they'll go, you know what we should do is we should build something that isn't necessarily going to be useful to everyone, but maybe it's a feel-good thing.
Right.
Like, on a separate note, which is completely, why build the massive, no, I shouldn't say why, the massive Esplanade children's playground.
Yep.
It's fantastic. And then spend another $6 million down the road at Cullen Bay. Why make 2 investments like that? The first one is fantastic. Or even if you're going to add onto it, don't have 2 separate ones, which make no sense at all.
Yeah.
But this is what the government does. How many times I've been in the shop that we're talking about, CWA, for 3.5 years. Every business beforehand has had the same issues for the last 10 years.
Right.
If every business that's gone in has complained about the park, has complained about the tables and the chairs, why doesn't council do something about it? And the interesting thing is I was lucky enough to I was able to look into a report that was done by council, independent report, where they sat down and they observed the Tamarind Park. The report mentions my business's name multiple times. And then they said that yes, there is some antisocial behaviour, but when there's not, families go in and people go in, and a lot of families will go in as overflow from the ice cream shop. They'll go and sit in that park in the tables. And then towards the end of the report, it says that we have engaged all the businesses around and we have engaged with the ice cream shop. Do you reckon I was engaged?
No.
No. And it's just like, no matter how many businesses can say, the TPS guards, the number one hotspot they know is us and the bus stop. There's like 3 or 4 in Raintree Park. How is it that if all your statistics are telling you the same thing, the businesses around you are telling you the same thing, you can go to any punter in the city who works there and say, name some hotspots. What do you reckon they're going to say? The Tamarind Park, everyone knows this. Politicians know this. Councillors know this. And why is nothing yet done?
Yeah.
And it's just like, if I told you, I've tried your food, it's not great.
Yeah.
What are you going to do about it?
Fix my food.
Fix it.
Yep.
Or, unless you're funneling money, not fix it. And then like, which you're obviously not, but like, and that's what I said to Katie Wolf today. I was like, if you had, if you're doing bad segments and you had no viewers or no listeners, what are you going to do? You're going to change? Yeah. So why is it after 6 years of the same government, it's gotten worse?
You said something that was very interesting just then about your patrons overflowing into Tamarind Park, you know, when things are busy and when there's no antisocial behaviour there. And I think that's, I don't know if an analogy is the right word, but it's, what it says to me is, you know, if there's overflow from your business, that business has a cyclical sort of trickle down effect where is if you're investing in business, there's jobs there for people, there's more incentive for people from outside the territory to move to the territory, to work for your ice creamery, bring money in. If you're now shutting down your your gelateria, that means there's less jobs. That means there's less money in the community. There's less incentive for those net positive migration inflows from other states. And I know that I think CDU, I think it was Andrew Taylor, he's a demographer, he does this stuff quite in depth. And some of the net negative outflows that we're having in the territory right now are absolutely alarming, and they should be ringing alarm bells, for the government and to take action. Is that how you sort of see it as well? Business sort of thriving business sort of has these sort of flow-on effects to community and building communities.
Yeah, 100%. The backbone of every economy is small businesses. Small businesses have collectively employed the most people. And when we initially went into that CWA building, because of the poor track record of businesses that have gone in there, when we went in, I hear repeatedly, businesses and residents and long-standing landlords around us were thankful because they said, finally, we were the beacon of hope. We were the beacon of light. Everywhere we've moved, it's always been busy. Because of how busy it is, and we make our shop bright and inviting, it pushes crime out. The light always pushes out darkness.
Yep.
But the NT now, it's shifting because you are taking away power from the people. Your businesses are getting tired, and every smashed window equals money. Money going out and not going back into the business and to make the business better.
Yeah.
All of our expenses are going to freight. Number one, the second expense is freight. Number one is insurance. To cover your business is to make sure your businesses are safe and sound. But if your money is going out and not staying in, that's why we can't grow.
Yeah. And not to mention, for every smash window you've got, that's a time impost that you've then got to take away from your core business, which is selling gelato.
Exactly.
That you're then spending on ringing a glazier. Come and fix my. Yeah.
It's great if you're a glazier.
Yeah. Business is booming.
Business is booming. Yeah. No issues there. 100%. And it's very sad. And to answer the second question about statistics and the NT, since I opened in 2018, I've heard the same conversations over and over again from politicians, and next year's the year. Next year is the year. Big projects. You watch. What are the projects? Can't say. Next year comes, 4 years later, 6 years later.
Mm.
In 2018, they were still talking about Beetaloo Basin. How much closer are we to Beetaloo? Every major project that comes up is either dies or it goes nowhere.
Mm.
The economic forum that came through, they said that 860 people have left the NT since the start of the year. NT government's projected is to be 700 people a year.
That's their goal.
That's their goal, 700 people a year. We've already lost that and some in the first quarter, and they're going to lose more.
So it's two or three steps back before you've even taken one.
Since 2014, they've had negative population growth, except for the 2 years during COVID, because everyone was locked in or locked out.
Yeah. So, I mean, as a small business and an employer of young people in particular, how do you cope with these sort of incidences happening, and then how do you communicate that to their parents? How do you talk to your staff? How does that make them feel?
It's a very good question. When I spoke to the 13-year-old and the other 16-year-old, they're quite resilient. They've all how do you say it? They're good kids.
Yeah.
But they've seen it a lot.
Mm.
And if you grow up here, it's just like, oh yeah, you're a tenant boy.
Yeah.
I'm a Darwin boy.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, it's just part of doing business here.
Mm-hmm.
But it's not. No, it shouldn't be.
Yeah. So they're just sort of it's the environment they've grown up in. They've gotten used to it, seeing that sort of thing on a regular basis.
And recently the 13-year-old, I was appalled the other day because he told me that he and his friend were in Casuarina, I think, and then they were getting chased by a couple other youths. They went to the cinemas, bought tickets so that they could run away from the kids, went inside the cinemas, and as they were in there, as the movie was about to start, the two youths snuck in, sat behind them, and then pushed them, and then the two youths pulled knives out.
That's terrifying.
Terrifying. Yeah. Imagine that. You're 13-year-old kids. And then now they don't wear any nice clothes. And I had the conversation before I went on to Katie Wolf, the girl in reception, or one of the workers there at Mix 104.9. She said that her younger brother is the same. If you wear nice clothes, they'll jump you. Mm. And it's just like, well, why would you send your kid anywhere now?
Yeah.
Like, we left Darwin High. You'd catch the bus either into the city or you catch the bus to Parap. You'd walk home. Even Parap. Like, I grew up in Parap as well.
Yeah.
In housing, which we were lucky enough to be put there.
Yeah.
But some of the bits in Parap were just notorious, And it's just like you've got side by side, like the fourth most sought after real estate in Darwin, next to some of the worst.
Yeah. So, I mean, what can we do to sort of break this cycle? Is it incumbent upon the small business group you were talking about earlier? I think is that like the Darwin
Business Group?
Business
that's
group?
the one that did that forum. Yeah.
Are they able to lobby government or council? I guess because it's happening in the city. What do you see as sort of the fix to these problems? How can we?
I think a lot of,
solve this?
and I don't know if we touched on it before. Businesses, all you can do is look after yourself, give recommendations to the government and the council, and it's up to the government and the council whether or not they abide by those recommendations. We, as businesses, it doesn't matter who's in power, you're going to have to adjust and change. But it's up to the government at the end of the day what's happening. And it's not just a Darwin thing, it's an Australia thing, and it's a Western world thing. Look what's happening in the US, especially in California. Now you can go steal and rob, and if it's less than $950, they won't prosecute.
Yeah.
Are we going to get the same to that?
Yeah.
The UK is the same. And then I guess that's why the UK, they went hard on Brexit. Whether you're for or against it, like the world is becoming so divided. Yeah. And it's quite sad because you grew up in 10, I grew up here. And some of my background story that we didn't touch on is like I was supposed to be born here. My grandma was sick, so I was born in the Philippines, came straight back, pretty much grew 32 years here, 1.5 years in Adelaide when we were 3 or 4, and then come back here, lived my whole life. Went to Milner Primary, then St. John's for 3 years, 2 years at Darwin High, Nycliffe Tigers, junior footy, and then Hellenic for football.
Right.
So soccer.
Yeah.
So in terms of that, I've done it. I played footy with Indigenous lads, Greek lads, anyone, you name it. It was so multicultural, and there was never ever a divide. And then now it feels like there's a massive divide.
Do you think in some ways social media has exacerbated that? I think, there's been research on it that, since 2013, like the rates of anxiety and mental health problems just basically skyrocketed. There's been, I think, numbers of studies done on it. And I think it's just due to a constant barrage of, media basically telling people that they should hate each other.
Yeah.
Do you see that as being any kind of contributing factor towards this, or is this a different sort of societal issue?
Going down the rabbit hole.
We're getting deep.
We're going deep. I wasn't ready. 3:30 on a Tuesday. We're going down the rabbit hole. I love it. I think there's both things. I think one of my favourite quotes ever is, "Hard times create strong men create good times create weak men create hard times." We are now in the position of good times have created weak men and weak policies. Mm-hmm. And I'm not saying, I think it's good. I think men, as in terms of like men, and that can also be moved to females as well, so we're not being sexist.
Yep.
I think that's just where the world is now, and I think social media does have a part to play. I think people have less critical thinking, and they just follow what everyone else follows. And you can look at the trends as well. It's like social media is good for that, but you have Black Lives Matter and then like Palestine, stand with this, stand with that.
Mm-hmm.
And what are we going to get to? We're going to have the same for Darwin, stand with the businesses, stand with life. Like, what are we going to be pro for? And then I think now, critical thinking has gone down the drain, and the masses are easily convinced. Yeah, so I guess there is a massive divide.
So do you just sort of think we're maybe stuck in this inevitable cycle that,
history always repeats itself.
Yeah, well, there's another saying, it doesn't repeat but it rhymes. Yeah. Is that sort of where you think we're at the moment?
Yeah, 100%. Do you, and it's always interesting with podcasts, Ray Dalio speaks about it a lot, and he said that this is the cycle that we're in.
Yep.
And it's up to us, like we can choose to think that it's not going to change, but the writing's on the wall.
Yeah. I guess if we could just circle back, speaking of cycles, if we could just circle back to, I guess, your journey in the city. So, you said you started up a pop-up, and then I understand, just from frequenting the city, and, my partner in particular likes your gelato, so we've been in your shop quite a bit. Where was your first premises, bricks and mortar? How did that start up, and then what was your journey, and then what were the reasons you sort of bounced around, if you don't mind?
Yeah, it's interesting. So I started my journey in maybe 2016, 2017. I was doing a lot of personal development, a lot of podcasts, and then I had to rewire my brain actually. So I was just listening and consuming and reading everything I could to change my mindset around business and around life. I moved out of home, and I just had to get my mind right. Not that it was bad, but it was just like in terms of business, and everything I was consuming was business. And then I eventually went down to Adelaide to visit a friend. And then one of his good mates his dad owns an ice cream shop called a gelateria shop called 48 Flavors.
Yep.
And synchronicities, man. When you're searching for something, it finds you. And I always had business ideas, and nothing ever was like, maybe I should try this. Nothing had ever stuck. And then I went down there, and I've always loved ice cream. Way too much, actually. And then I was down there visiting him, and then everywhere I went was meeting all his friends who were in business. And then went to 48 Flavors. They had just won all these awards for South Australia. There's like a World Cup for gelati. They went in and they won the world's best gelato, voted by the people.
Wow.
Crazy. And then I remember, like, we were supposed to go to their house, and the guy's always late. He's always like half an hour, 45 minutes. He's like, yeah, go there at like 8 p.m. I'll meet you there. He's like, we're waiting in the car for like until 9 p.m. And then in front of the van, on the back of the van where we were parked, it was like 48 Flavors now starting the franchise. And it was just sitting there in front of me, and I was like, how can I bring this to Darwin? And then I got back to Darwin 1 or 2 weeks later, and I spoke to my friends in business, and I was like, there's this ice cream man, it's hot, there's not much competition here, how do I bring it up? And then he's like, why don't you just ask him? And I called him, and I was like so nervous, I had a script. I said, man, would you think about supplying me? And he's like, yeah, I would. And just went off that. And the funny thing is, I was actually, because I was working at Power and Water at the time.
Yeah.
I was actually going to do a food van trailer for the middle markets.
Oh, okay.
So I set everything up and thinking, yeah, for sure, I'd get into the markets. Like, why would they say no when it's such a world-class product? South Australian, and arguably they were voted like Australia's best product in a lot of categories.
Yep.
I was like, this is a no-brainer. Yeah, it was. Yeah, they said no multiple times,
Right.
as you would know. The
It's tough to
bureaucracy.
get in. Yeah, it's
Tough to get in.
Yeah.
Which was a learning curve. So I had a trailer, I had all these assets, I had Gelateria, and I remember sitting with a friend. There was about $10,000 worth of stock sitting in cold storage. Couldn't move it, couldn't open it, couldn't do anything. Had the fridges, had a trailer, and had stock. Couldn't open. And then my business mentor at the time is like, "Have you thought about home deliveries?" And I was like, "Oh yeah." Created a Facebook page and then spooked it to anyone I would know. I was like, "I'm launching a business." Started selling it. Would just message, had this list of flavors. These are our flavors. Would you like to buy it? We would package it up. Me and my mate, we would drive around and we just deliver it. And that's how we initially got started.
Beautiful.
Then we got the second. Pippa had just finished a pop-up it was at 14 Nucky Street where our first shop was.
Okay.
Emailed the person, "Do you mind if we do a temporary pop-up?" They said no worries. 1st of July 2018, we did the pop-up, and ever since then, never looked back.
Right.
Yeah.
So are you involved in any way? Because I've always wondered this, how gelati or ice cream flavors come about, like are you involved in that process at all?
Unfortunately not. Yeah, we still bring it all in, and,
Yep.
and that's the other side as well. We've looked at manufacturing multiple times, and we've had opportunities to manufacture.
Yep.
But every year, it's always like up and down, and I always look at it and say, if I'm going to make a massive investment like that, then that means I'm stuck in the territory because, as you know, it's very hard to start something, any business, and just be able to leave. And then because we don't have enough turnover, and it's just like, okay, if I look at it and I'm genuinely going to give this a crack, then I would have to invest time. And it was just, my heart was never there for a long time, the last 1 or 2 years, which sounds bad. Like, I love it. But when you're facing so many negativities, so many social issues, the economy isn't getting better, and which goes back to where we were in 2022.
Yep.
The best thing in terms of the economy to ever happen to Darwin was COVID. 17, 18, 19 was the worst years that Darwin had probably seen for a very long time, especially after the boom of 2014 with Impex.
Yep.
17, 18, 19 was horrific. 20, 21 and 22, fantastic because of COVID. And then we've gone back to, in the space of 6 months, we went back to where we were in 2019.
Right.
And now we're probably on par, if not worse than that.
Yeah.
It's like, how did you go from highs of highs to lowest of lows?
Yeah.
And then it goes back again. That it was already an inflated bubble, low interest rates, stimulus, easy money like JobKeeper, JobSeeker money. It was just, getting thrown around. And now we're paying for it. But there was what major projects was to sustain that growth? And the economic forum that I keep talking about. Darwin, or the NT, has 8 mines. Whether you're for mines, against mines, that's a different story.
Yeah.
We've got 8 mines. 2 of those were closed, and one of them had recently closed because of the ship crashing into it.
Yeah.
WA has 125 mines. WA receives royalties. It's like, we cannot be moving forward if we've got 0 major projects, and we've got so much natural resources. And so, if you want to go down a deep hole, I'll tell you something, and I don't know whether I'm not actually allowed to say this, but you know what? I don't really care anymore.
We get all the exclusive here.
Power and Water in 2020, I believe, or 2021. The Black Tip project, in terms of the gas, how they load the gas pipeline to Mount Isa for the gas. From my understanding, that gas has run out. It was supposed to be for 20 or 40 years. It ran out, and now they're getting residual gas or something like that. And it ran out within the first 2 to 3 years. From then, my understanding is that the NT government of Power and Water was buying gas from Impex at Japanese retail prices
Inflated.
plus 30%.
Yep.
And you ask yourself now, why are we paying such high electricity prices? Is because we're having to buy gas in.
Yep.
And then what's happening with Barossa, and I completely want to make it clear, it's like environmental, yes, I don't ever want to damage the environment. And if there's sacred sites and things like that, 100%. That was held up for a year and a half. And then it was shown that it was not legitimate.
Yep.
Like, if it was a legitimate claim, I completely understand it. All for it. The fact that it's come across, like, you and I are suffering. And I said this to the friend, it's just like, are we able to sue that person because they've just held up, and now we're suffering because of and I don't want to get into the details, but
Yep.
it's just like it's hard, man.
Yeah.
You're stopping growth. If it's legitimate, I'm all for it.
Mm.
And so like now, when you look at the population, we should have. Why are we paying the second highest gas prices, electricity prices in the state in Australia? We shouldn't be. We've got so much natural resources. We're on water restrictions for Darwin, the place where it rains half the time, and we're on water restrictions. They've got to build a new dam.
Yeah, they're going to build the Arrows. Have you heard of the Arrows off Adelaide River offstream?
Yeah,
that's actually a really good project. That's going to unlock, water for 50 years for Darwin. So,
100%.
that's the type of projects that we need to unlock.
Big time. 100%.
To really stimulate economic development. Look, and I agree. Mining approvals need to be shortened.
What's the perfect thing that the current government has done? They merged the Department of Environment and mining together. The two things that contradict each other.
Right.
So how's anything supposed to get done?
Yeah, okay. So you think like if, separating those things might be a good start?
Well, it was funny because I spoke to someone in Labor and they're like, yeah, that wasn't a great decision. We're going to have to go dismantle that if we get re-elected.
Right.
So who sat at that table to make that decision? And who thought that was a good decision?
Yeah, I mean, just to play devil's advocate, I guess they must have thought having those two departments
they could work together.
It might have just streamlined that process. But you're probably right. In effect, what it's had, what it's done is it's slowed everything down.
And on a side note as well, you might find this funny or not, but at Middle Arm they had that Senate inquiry, and I did a cheeky post. I saw that the CEO of the Department of Environment or whatever it was, she was driving a Prado, and it said no fracking, no coal.
Mm-hmm.
The person who's the head of APIA, the oil and gas lobbyist, he was driving a scooter.
Right.
And then it's just like Prado versus scooter, who has more emissions. And I'm all for it. Like if you got to drive the Prado to go to your job site or like to a mine site, completely understand it.
Yeah.
But read the room.
Yeah.
Like, should you not be driving a Prius or electric, especially if it's within the Darwin City area? Why are you driving one of the most like fuel guzzling, like worse for emissions?
Yeah.
To the Senate inquiry. Yeah, not a good look.
Nah. So that took. So sorry, just going back to your time in the city. The second move. Oh, sorry, was it the first? The first building you were in Nucky Street.
Yeah, so we're there for a bit over 2 years, and then we moved to the corner where the old Woolies building is.
Yep.
And that was the best thing because we moved, and it was a gamble to move as well because we were in this awkward position where we were like busy enough to expand, but also like expanding would mean like, is it risky?
Yeah.
We expanded, and then 2 days or a week after we signed the lease, COVID happened, and I was like, oh, here we go. Yep. See what happens, and then but thankfully that we were safe. The NT was safe. Businesses were booming, and then that really propelled us moving forward.
Mm-hmm.
We would have stayed on the corner. However, there was like some contract issues with the lease, and then the one that we're in now came up, and we took the move again, which was a massive risk. And then people said I was crazy, and we moved. And since we did make the move, it was like probably the best thing,
right,
in terms of the business.
Well, I actually know the client that was in that CWA building before you got there. Yeah. I didn't want to say a name, but
sorry.
Yeah, that's okay.
Can we bleep that out?
We might be able to edit that one out. And I know that they experienced antisocial.
Oh yeah, I've seen
issues.
some of her stuff. Shocking.
Yeah.
Shocking.
So and it's it's so sad because it's such a beautiful building. It's a landmark, like you were saying, of the city. So it's very sad that you've now had to shut up shop. How long do you think the closure is going to be for? Is it indefinite at this point, or do you have sort of a time?
I hope to open by the end of the week. I just got to make sure all the duress alarms are in. Hopefully the council are able to move quickly. I spoke to the councillor the other day and said, like, what are we supposed to do, mate? Like, businesses can move quickly. We can move, like, we're so agile.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just like, why is it that that there's an issue, and it's just like, so much red tape. Like, that's the issue, man. It's a health and safety concern. And it's still taken 1.5 days, 2 days to get temporary fencing. If I made the phone call, I can call a temporary fencer to put it around. It would have been done in like an hour or 2 hours.
Yep.
Why does it take so long? Another question I posed to someone else the other day in terms of these closures. Why do you think none of the antisocial things happen in front of the council chambers or in front of Parliament House?
Mm-hmm.
How is it where the Anglican Church, which is right across the road from both of those locations, why do they have all the issues,
Mm-hmm.
but not on council property or at Parliament House?
Yeah.
Why is the waterfront pristine and clean and no issues? Why is Cullen Bay have no issues? But Darwin City is just rife.
Yeah.
And it really reminds me, I've been watching Batman lately, and I love Batman. Dark Knight Rises and The Dark Knight. We literally, that's how it feels sometimes. And then the quote, like
We're Gotham or something.
Gotham, yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
And then, was it Alfred says to Bruce, he says, some people just want to watch the city burn.
Mm.
And that's literally like, that's how I feel about the politicians and the councillors. You see your city struggling. Do you actually walk down the streets?
Yeah.
Like everyone tells you it's not safe. Everyone tells you that there's poor lighting. Everyone tells you that they're too scared to walk down the streets. They're the same streets you must walk down.
Mm.
Or you just go up to level 5 in the Ivory Tower. Everything looks great from there.
Yep.
The views are fantastic. You can't see if there's any issues down there. And then right at the front of your footstep is where the most notorious location is.
Mm. So who's going to rise and be our Dark Knight, so to speak? Is it going to be you, John?
I've done it a few times.
You've had a go?
I've had a go. I don't have enough. I'm not a billionaire.
Philanthropist. Yeah.
But it's sad, man. And like you said, we just want to see our city thrive.
Mm-hmm.
There's so much. The word that I had the most is potential. Every article that comes out says that Darwin has a small economy but so much potential.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm over it because unrealized potential is just useless.
Yeah, I mean, there's only so many times you can call Darwin the gateway to Asia and all these other beautiful, should be the Singapore of the North and all that sort of stuff.
Gateway to Asia, can't get a flight to Asia.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah,
So
gateway to Asia, Asia's closed off.
Mm.
Yeah, it's cheaper to fly from Perth to Bali than it is from Perth to Darwin.
Mm. Yeah, so we got some problems. So anyway, look, we'll leave it there, mate.
Yeah,
but we really thank you coming in at such short notice. And because we're coming from a good place. We want the best for the territory, and Darwin in particular, because that's where we live.
Yeah. There's just so many contradictions here, and then after 6 years to 7 years in business, it's just like you want it to succeed. You want it to do well. You want people to be safe. I want everyone to be safe. I want everyone to have a good life.
Yep.
However that looks is like that's up to the politicians, left or right. Like that's where they come up, and that's what their job is to do.
Yep.
But everyone should have access to housing, to clean water, to safety.
Mm-hmm.
I'm 100% for that, and that's where our taxpayers' money should go, and it is going. But there's a lot of wasted money as well.
Yeah.
And like you said, private business brings people in, brings money into the territory that can help expand the economy. But until that happens, you hear it a lot from my friends who are in big business. Big business won't come. They refuse to come because there's antisocial issues that are here.
Well, no one's going to invest in a business. No one's going to buy a house, if the windows are constantly getting smashed. So, again, it has that sort of cyclical effect. No business, no investment, no jobs, and sort of it's just a spiral to the bottom.
Spiral to the bottom.
So
that's exactly where we're at.
Which is very sad. So hopefully, things start to improve sooner rather than later. But
it's fantastic. Darwin, you meet people like this. The opportune, you walk down. We have a yarn. We're able to sit down.
Yep.
Big ideas, and that's what this is about, man. There's some really big movers and shakers, and Darwin is, to its credit, has produced so many talented people across all sectors
per capita,
and industry. Per capita
punches hard, doesn't it? Above
big
its weight.
time,
Yep.
way bigger.
Yep.
And it's just like, imagine if that was facilitated and pushed.
Yep.
And then you're breeding, because you can look at the crime. You can breed crime and antisocial behaviour, but like us having this conversation, meeting these lads, and you bring enough people like that together, you can make a you can have a revolutionary cycle.
Absolutely.
I agree. Appreciate it. Thank you for having me on.
We usually like to give our guests an opportunity to plug anything that they would like to promote. If you want, mate, you don't have to, but we can just give you a minute. The floor is yours.
I'm not too sure.
A website or anything,
just if you know John's, just heading down to John's. And just the one thing that I did say on Katie Wolf, any of your friends or your favourite cafes, restaurants, clothing shops, just go and support them.
Support local business.
Support local businesses.
Get on down there. John.
Perfect. Thank you very much.
Thanks, mate. Appreciate it.
Cheers.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, boys.